Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Trade Stock. Super excited for today's episode. We have the CEO of Aspire, Mark Tipton, along with the senior product owner, Whitney Griffin. This episode is packed with all kinds of information from when Aspire started, how they grew all the way to where they are today, the partnership with Service Titan, and more importantly, the product roadmap of what's coming. Maggie, you work at Aspire. Was this a fun episode for you?
It was a very fun episode for me. When Mark and Whitney reached out saying they wanted to talk about construction and just the evolution of the company, I was all in 100% yes. Mark is someone who I look up to tremendously for everything he's built at Aspire. When I started, there was only 23 employees, and now we have over 700. And every step of the way, Mark has remained true to himself and true to his vision of truly helping the trades. And we go into, Whitney explains, how we work with our customers and, strategize with them to really innovate our software, what's coming up next. The biggest thing coming to Aspire next is construction. We talk about roadmap. And so it's just a great episode to learn everything about, what's involved in a software company, especially what's involved with one that works so tightly with its customers and the trades, and, what to expect out of what your experience with working with Aspire.
Yeah, it's a great episode to understand how this startup is truly, as Mark put it, raising the bar in the landscape industry. And it's no wonder why you and I are so aligned in this mission of this Trade Stock podcast and what we do. I see that in Mark, and I see what he brings to the industry in terms of innovation and improvement. We are really professionalizing the landscape industry, and it's not just obviously us, it's an entire movement of our industry that is moving to this next generation. I call it the revolution. And between now and 2030, our industry will not look the same. And I think that's a really, really good thing. And I'm super excited to have Mark and Whitney share their perspective and their vision for where we're headed in this amazing trades industry.
Yeah, for sure. Whitney's story is incredible, where she's come from to where she's at now. I honestly don't think they need much more of an introduction. We can probably dive right in because we talked to them for quite some time, and there's a lot of good information to come out of this episode. So let's go ahead and dive on in.
All right, perfect. Let's jump in.
All right. We are here today with Mark Tipton, the CEO and founder of Aspire Software, and Whitney Griffin, a senior product owner at Aspire. We are so excited for this. Mark, you and I go way back. Let's dive right in. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Aspire, what it is, how it was founded from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely, Maggie. And thanks for having us on the show today. Aspire was founded, hard to believe, but almost or just over 11 years ago. We just had our 11-year anniversary a couple weeks ago. And Kevin Kehoe and I formed Aspire back in 2013 because we saw a huge opportunity in the landscape industry. And it was a significant need there that was not being met by the current software platforms that are out there. And we had a passion for the industry. We both had backgrounds in the industry and really wanted to do something significant that would change the industry, not just change a company or a handful of companies, but really change the industry and raise the bar for what it meant to be a successful landscape company.
Well, Mark, I love hearing that. And I think looking back, here we are 11 years later, you guys have accomplished a lot of that. And I know there's more plans ahead to make bigger and even a greater impact. So let's talk a little bit about that roadmap, just briefly, of how Aspire went from an idea with you and Kevin to where we're at today with, I don't know how many hundreds of users you guys have, but it seems like everyone I talk to at these conferences are on Aspire. So maybe just give us a quick little overview of the last, 11 years.
Yeah, it started out small. We raised some funding to go build the platform. So Kevin and I had this vision, and it was a great vision. It was one of those, what they call BHAGs, the big area audacious goal to go have this platform. And so we went out and we sold the idea to a bunch of our initial investors, some of which had nothing to do with the industry, but some of which were part of the industry and were our initial clients. And we started out with a small group of these investors and to-be customers that we called our seat at the table group. And these were people that had great relationships with from our history in the industry. They're big names in the industry that you would recognize today that just had a great perspective on what a successful landscape company looked like. And we spent a lot of time with them those first, I think it was 15 months that we were basically just working on building the platform. And we had these seat at the table meetings. We'd review our ideas with them, show them prototypes of the software, show them what we were actually building, get their feedback. And it was a great experience and a great way to start the company because we were building something that we knew was going to hit the mark. Because it wasn't Kevin and I's ideas in a back room. We were talking to people that were running the businesses that we were going to serve. And so it really put us in a really, really strong position to hit it on the head, hit the nail on the head, if you will, because with an investment as big as that and a project as long as that, you basically have one shot. You either hit it or you don't. And if you don't, I'm scooping ice cream or flipping burgers somewhere. But fortunately, we hit it thanks to a lot of good input, a lot of hard work by a lot of people, and a bunch of customers who believed in us when we had nothing. We called it vaporware. We'd show up at the meetings with screenshots of what the software was going to look like. And it was kind of a fun little joke we had for that first year and a half that there was this vaporware thing and Aspire's going to come out with it someday. And we think we know what it's going to look like and what it's going to do. But then they embraced it and let us run their businesses on version 1.0 of a software platform, which if you go back and ask some of them today, was that the best thing they ever did? It was absolutely not the best thing they ever did. Version 1.0 is not nearly as good as version 2.0, and we're on version, 500 at this point. But they believed in it and stuck with us. And we started out with a good product. All kidding aside, version 1.0 had some bugs in it for sure, but it was a good, solid core of what you see in the Aspire system today. There's so many of the pieces there that really have not changed much in 10 years since we initially rolled it out. But back to your question, Justin, we started adding customers at a pretty good clip. So we're into 2015 at this point. We're adding a few customers and adding some bigger names and really building a reputation. I'd have to go back and look and see when did we add our 100th customer. But
So Mark,
I can tell you when it was, Mark. I know, I remember. I was working in Aspire Care when we added our 100th. It was in 2018, about June of 2018, we added our 100th customer. So almost 5 years after you and Kevin founded the company. And not to interrupt your train of thought here, but for someone who's been along on the ride since 2017 with Mark, it's truly remarkable to see the transition of the software, back to the days where the green grass is on the left-hand side and all of the feedback we've taken from our clients and input and enhancements and all the things that have gone into it since where we're at today, which is well over 1,500 customers. So very exciting to see. And I know a big part of that is our product team. And so I don't want to leave Whitney out of the conversation if she's patiently waiting. Whitney, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and what do product owners do at Aspire? It's a very catchy term in the tech world, but for all the people in the trades out there, what is your role and how do you incorporate that into what Mark's talking about?
Thanks, Maggie, Justin, for having both of us on. I'm thrilled that Mark did not end up scooping ice cream or flipping burgers. So my background, very, very briefly, I came to Aspire from the industry. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years if you count my undergraduate internships, and I do because I worked hard those summers. Most recently was working at a design build firm here in Austin, Texas, where I'm located. And, post-pandemic, there was a lot of money that people had to spend on their properties. They couldn't travel, they couldn't go places, and our industry really just kind of exploded. And it was incredible. I doubled my sales goal in 2020. Going into 2021, we were not slowing down. We were only speeding up. It was absolute insanity. And that summer, I had like a fourth diagnosis of skin cancer. And my doctor basically told me that I couldn't work outside anymore, which really devastated me. And because I was doing what I wanted to do. And so my significant other is a software engineer. And he said, look, you have got the personality for product, whatever that means. I take it as a compliment. I don't know how he meant it. But he started sending me job descriptions for product owners and product managers. And I finally just kind of saw what he saw. So I took a certification course, and literally the day I received my certification, I checked Aspire's website first because even though I was coming from a company that was not on the Aspire platform, I knew that Aspire was the best. And I wanted to work at the best company. And so my director, Brian Brinkworth, was willing to take a shot on me, who didn't really know anything about software development at all. And so what does a product owner do? It's a really great question. I meet with people all day. My job is meetings. All jokes aside, so if you imagine in a software company, the software developers are really the most valuable asset. And, Mark would probably say, you're all valuable. We are, but like they're the people that like build the thing. And so you want to protect their time, right? And so when Mark is talking about having these user meetings, when Aspire was first being conceptualized, that's kind of what we do, because you want your developers developing the software, but you also need people who know how to speak the user's language and ask the right questions to figure out what it is they need so that we can translate that into something that the engineers can build. And that's probably the most succinct way of describing what it is I do every day.
So, Whitney, you came into
Yeah.
Aspire. When did you join the team?
Holy cow, 3 years ago, like this month. Yeah, 2021.
Wow. Well, congratulations. And on that note, when you came in, what was your focus coming in terms of product? Because we all know that there's a lot of different aspects to Aspire. What was your initial focus? And then what is your focus today, if that's changed?
That's a great question. So when I started, it's really interesting. When I did my first set of interviews, the acquisition was obviously known, but it wasn't public. So from the time I first met my director to the time he gave me the offer, he said, oh, by the way, just so you know, things are happening. We've been acquired by ServiceTitan. And so after I onboarded, there was very much this feeling of excitement of knowing that, okay, we're going to do really cool things, but we didn't know what they were going to be yet. And one of the first projects I was handed was this gigantic list of ideas from our user idea portal. And this list had been kind of curated and prioritized by our client services team. And my boss handed me that list and basically said, okay, go write some user stories, which those are the tickets that engineers develop. Go write some user stories and figure out, what this looks like. And when I started going through the list, about 2/3 of it mentioned contract renewals. And so I went back to my boss and I said, hey, I don't really think that we need to kind of treat this as one-off request. I feel like there's a bigger initiative here. And that's kind of the first thing that I actually worked on was I prepared basically an overhaul of the contract renewal workflow. And you'll probably be thinking, Justin, now wait a second, that's a fairly recent release. You're not wrong. As ever is the case in software development, roadmaps change. They change wildly and rapidly. And so we prepared this work in the, winter, spring of 2022, but we didn't actually get to implement it until earlier this year because we do listen to our customers. And as we hear like, okay, we need to do some things that are a little bit more important, we shift our focus and do what we need to do at that time.
Go ahead, Maggie. I'd love to get your take on this.
No, I was just gonna say that actually is like a great leading comment into kind of, she mentioned the ServiceTitan acquisition, and I know Mark, that was big decision for you to partner with ServiceTitan to, better serve the whole trades industry. So during that time, during, this time of constant roadmap development, doubling down, what was the main thing that made you want to partner with ServiceTitan from a product side?
From a product standpoint, ServiceTitan had an incredible reputation in the PHE space, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, hands down, the best product in their space. And they are a product-led organization. They know that the key to success, if you're a company like ours, SaaS software as a service, that you have to have the best product to win. They really took that and they did that at a really high level, but meaning the level of investment they had at product was extraordinary. And as I was talking with them early on, there was a lot of alignment in a lot of areas which you need in order to bring two organizations together. But when you talk specifically product, and we sat down and we shared with them our budget, which we thought was pretty big. And then they shared with us their budget, which my jaw hit the table. I couldn't believe the number. And they said, here's what we want to do with you. And it was basically in the first year with ServiceNight, we essentially tripled our product investment in 1 year, which is amazing, an amazing opportunity to be able to do it. But it's also not an easy thing to do. And fortunately, we're able to go find people like Whitney that we could bring into the organization that really help us and guide us with where we're making these investments. Because like Whitney said, the engineers are a critical resource, right? That is a limited resource. We don't have an unending supply of engineers. They're hard to find. And so we need to make sure we're targeting them and focusing them on the right things that our customers need. And that, again, we're hitting that nail on the head as far as how we build it and what it does. And so I give a huge amount of credit to Dan Blake for really putting the organizational infrastructure in place, if you will, to enable us to triple it and be effective with that investment. And so we're continuing to grow our product investment. Even this past year, you'll see all this stuff that Whitney's been working on with construction was a huge part of that. And just proud of the way that team was able to step up and do it. But that is thanks to ServiceNight. That was a big piece of the attractiveness of saying, hey, is Aspire better if we partner with ServiceNight? My perspective on it back then was yes. And same perspective today, by the way, 3+ years later.
From my perspective, it was a fantastic decision. But also, I mean, you took that conversation right where I wanted you to, and that was, into where we're spending and investing money for product right now. Construction. 2 years ago, we announced that we were going into the commercial cleaning space for the Aspire platform. Now, focus and investment is into construction. So I don't know, Mark, do you want to talk a little bit high level about what that investment looks like, and also as to why construction is our area of focus?
Yeah, why don't I start at a high level, and then I'll pass the baton here over to Whitney, who could kind of thematically kind of talk through the different aspects specifically within construction while we're working on. But essentially over the last years, and Aspire's been doing construction since the beginning. We have functionality in there to support key aspects of it, but our customers want it more. And so a lot of the feedback that we're getting from our customers, we assimilate together. That's essentially what Whitney and her team do, right? Is take all that input, prioritize it. And construction was at the top of the list over the last couple of years. And so what excites me about it is, first of all, we can serve our existing customers better. So many of our customers have construction, and some of them significant construction as part of their business. And they were managing it either partway with Aspire, but they were still doing a lot of spreadsheets and other things outside of Aspire. And so for us to be able to offer them the functionality that brings everything back under one roof and be able to run it in one system was a huge step for us. And again, puts us back in that position of, I think, raising the bar across the industry to say, here's what it's like to be a successful landscape contractor that also does construction. And so it was really about serving a growing need in our client base. A lot of this construction stuff is where he kind of walks through some of the areas you'll find aren't unique to construction. They actually help contractors who are doing more design builds or work, maintenance work, enhancements types of things. So there's some just general functionality in there that's just good to have, but very, very important for construction. And so, just listening to our clients, looking at the market opportunities that were there, because it also gives us an opportunity to grow our business more. We can serve more companies now than we could before. So having that, rise to the top of the list and say, this is our top priority, and we're going to invest millions of dollars into these enhancements to make that work. And so, Whitney, one of the things that you did that I was really excited about, because it felt like it brought us back to our roots, was you assembled these customer advisory groups. You had several of them where we were working hand in hand with our customers to say, hey, these are the things that you're asking for. How do we best make that work for you? And it was so cool to see that. I know a lot of the ideas we received were from our idea portal, which is a tool that our customers have that they can log into and give us ideas for what the product does. And other customers can then vote on those ideas. And I think, Whitney, we had something like 30 plus ideas that came from the idea portal that are now in our construction enhancements, and over 500 votes from other customers who saw that idea and said, yeah, I second that. I want that. And so talk to us just a little bit, Whitney, and share with us that experience you had of working with those groups and what that allowed you to do as far as bringing the product to where it is today.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, when we've always had an idea portal, or at least I should say always, since I have been at Aspire. And that's a great resource for us to see, kind of trends and what users value in terms of next steps. And that's kind of how we built our business case when we went to Service Titan and said, hey, if you invest a whole lot of money, we can grow this platform. But what we didn't want to do is kind of just go blindly into the ether and assume that, all of the information that we had gathered, and some of those ideas had actually come, maybe a little bit pre-pandemic, or right as the pandemic was happening again, when the landscape construction industry really just kind of blew wide open more recently. And so I felt like doing advisory boards was, necessary due diligence. We knew we had good ideas. We knew we had good feedback going into the roadmap, but we really wanted to validate that, hey, this is what we thought you needed. Is this still the case? And so at Ignite last year in Las Vegas, we presented our construction roadmap, a very high level, very loosely workflow based. And then we solicited ideas and volunteers from users who attended Ignite and said, hey, if you want to be a member of our advisory board, fill out this Google form. We will put you on the board. And to be honest, Mark, I was hoping for, 10 to 12 volunteers. We are all busy. The green industry has very, very seasonal work where I knew at some point people are going to get really busy. And I thought, if we have 10 to 12 people, then I can probably staff enough calls to get good feedback. And we had over 40, almost 50 people that signed up and said, yes, I want to do this. And then I'm thinking, I can't put 50 people on a Zoom call because that's not going to be productive either. And so I looked at the roadmap and I just kind of broke it down into kind of thematic areas. So I broke it down into, okay, here's the set of features that we're going to put together to address better, more concise financial reporting and get all of the data at your fingertips. And then we had a section for estimating efficiency. And then we had a third group for production efficiency, for people who are more production or field focused or crew focused improvements. And then our last subgroup was for submittals, all things submittals and change orders, which is really kind of targeting that bid, build, large construction piece of the market. And after we had everyone in the group, we let them self-select which group they wanted to go into. So no one was forced to do something they didn't want to do. And I carried through 4 simultaneous customer advisory boards for about 5 months earlier this year. I think I need to go back and check my calendar, but I think there was a time of about 4 months where I had a 2-hour Friday afternoon meeting every week, always meeting with a different group. But it was so impressive and so helpful. And there was actually one of those groups who, looking at the roadmap, they said, you know what, this looks great. And if you deliver this is also this is really cool. But do you know what would be even better? And they just threw this idea onto the table that, to be honest, I did not find it in the idea portal. And I did a lot of work and due diligence chasing that down with client services, with implementation, with our sales staff to make sure, are you hearing this too? And we actually ended up changing our construction roadmap based on feedback from that advisory board. We pulled off 2 features and put a really big one on that we're going to deliver sometime early next year. And that's just the coolest thing.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
What a story. And you know what I'm thinking as I'm hearing all this is, Mark, you mentioned how much involvement you had with contractors at the very beginning. Your initial phase of developing Aspire, you've had these really skin in the game contractors who helped you develop it. And through all the growth and 1,000 users plus now, you guys are still leveraging and utilizing that same feedback loop with contractors. And it seems to be a very successful part of your entire product roadmap, how you create, how you innovate. And due to this 1 to 2 year lag time in terms of creating an idea and then getting it to market and putting it into the system, you guys are staying ahead of those industry trends. I mean, how much of that is intentional? How much of that is just part of what you guys do? It's baked into the culture of Aspire. But it just sounds like this whole process has been very deliberate, very intentional.
It is. It's extraordinarily intentional. And it's amazing to me that we're able to do what we do. And we've got a very good team, very talented team. Whitney's team is spectacular. But we've got a lot of talent on that team to manage them. That is what they do, essentially, is take that feedback, and the feedback comes in all different ways. We've got our idea portal out there. Customers can submit directly to that, vote on that. We have things coming from our service teams, and as we look at areas of the products that are the product that it isn't delivering when it should, right? We get a lot of support calls about it. Maybe it's glitchy or whatever. And so we'll take feedback from them. We'll take feedback even from our go-to-market teams, whether it's on the marketing side, sales side. They'll give us input to say, hey, here's what the marketing is asking for. So there's just a tremendous amount of work in compiling all that information, and that's sorting through it, prioritizing it. And we really do listen to customers. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way because an idea comes in and maybe it takes us a couple of years to get there, to get it out, but recognize we're getting thousands and thousands of ideas. And what Whitney, you just heard her describe her process, right? She's looking for the themes of, hey, 2/3 of these and something to do with contract renewals. And so taking that and doing, okay, we've got some serious momentum there, right? There's a lot of customers asking for that. And so making that a priority. There's a lot that goes into it. Whitney, do you know how big your team is? Just product owners, product managers?
I think when I was hired, I was the 3rd product owner, and I think we have 12 or 15 now. I should have counted. I forget, but it's astronomical growth, and that's not counting product managers.
It's been a big investment and an important one, because if we're going to put our money where our mouth is, which is where we listen to customers, that has to be a huge piece of what we do. We have to listen. And because there's so many voices out there now, well over 1,000, I think Maggie said something like 1,500 now. There's a lot of voices to listen to and a lot of good input out there, but it takes a lot of people to manage that.
First thing that comes to my mind, and I always go to the Aspire core values, is our clients work with Whitney's team and people like Whitney to live out the boldly innovate core value, because a lot of our innovation comes from what our clients are providing us. And then Whitney's team takes that and translates it from contractor speak to product speak. And that is a very unique skill that takes an incredible talent like Whitney to do. And so I just wanted to comment that boldly innovating is exactly where they live.
It is. And I actually want to interject there too. That's actually my favorite Aspire core value. But I want to make sure that the credit really is on our brilliant engineers. There have been countless examples that I could give you. We get an idea and we start ideating on it. And at first it's, we could do this, but that's just technically impossible, or that's going to take much longer than we thought. So we plan for plan B, and it goes to the team. And then the team says, why aren't we doing it this other way, which is plan A? And you say, well, yeah, but that's just so technically complicated. And they like just figure it out. It is incredible
Mhm.
what our engineers do. And if you tell them, well, we wanted to do it this way, but that was just really complex, it's almost like they take it as a challenge and say, bet, because
Yeah.
they will deliver plan A.
Yeah, for sure. Justin, from your
So,
perspective,
yeah.
I know you use Aspire a little bit for well, actually a lot of it for your construction side of things. You have some big projects working through it right now. Where are you at with all this, hearing the exciting things coming up on the roadmap? What do you want to hear out of Whitney?
So there's a few things going through my head right now. One is Mark, Whitney, thanks so much for sharing the back end insights of how a software company creates and innovates. Because I think a lot of us in the trades, it's like, hey, we want to move the battery powered mowers. You just go buy battery powered mowers tomorrow, and now you have them. But you guys have to, it's like this flywheel that you have to go through this process and ensuring it's the right move. You do the engineering, you do the testing. It's a long road. So I'm thinking from the Aspire and Service Plan partnership to where we are today, you guys are probably just all that innovation, all that investment, that 3 to 5x investment in money is just now probably starting to see the light of day. Us as users are probably just starting to see the beginning of that. And I have to imagine over the next year, the acceleration and cadence of new products, new innovation, and what the system looks like in 12 months is probably going to be pretty dramatically different, just based on this flywheel of you have to start slow and then it gains momentum. Am I tracking that right of kind of where you guys are at in this process of R&D and investment?
It is a big ship to move, especially when you throw quality on top of that and all that, right? So if we have to send things through quality control, even after we've designed it, built it, and now it's ready for testing, we've got to make sure, because we've got 1,500 companies running on this platform. We can't make big mistakes, and we're never perfect. We're striving to be, but we'll always have little bugs. But there's quality in there too. I think we've done a good job of getting some things out there efficiently. We released a lot of snow stuff last year that was just quick turnaround. We did some analysis earlier in the year on what were some things that we could do and can we get it out by the snow season. So there are some things that we were able to turn around a little bit quicker and get out there. But the big stuff like construction, it doesn't happen overnight. And there's a lot of planning, prep, and meetings ahead of time before a line of code gets written. Once the code's written, then it needs to be tested and vetted and all of that. So it is a process. It is a process for sure.
And it's got to be challenging. I mean, we have a pretty robust construction department. I've hired a lot of project managers on our construction side, and it's not like they all manage it the same way. There's a multitude of approaches and methodologies from different generations and different backgrounds. If someone has a more civil background versus a more horticultural background, they're going to approach a project in a different mindset, and they're going to want something different out of the software. So I know for us, we're always dealing and challenging with how do we handle and create SOPs that everyone fits into within K&D. I can only imagine that is then multiplied by infinity almost for Whitney and her team, the feedback you guys get and how people want the system to be ran. There's got to be a lot of conflict. Is that correct, Whitney?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I strive for kind of an 80% rule. If I can delight 80% of my users, then I feel like I've hit a home run. We don't aim for 100%, and especially in construction. I'm so glad you said that, because you're dead right. Everyone does it differently, and it's the nature of the beast, right? Every construction job is different, and when every job is different, it's just really hard to have streamlined SOPs. And so we know when we're delivering, enhanced functionality, there may be some folks that say, oh my gosh, you hit a home run. And then there may be some folks who say, why did you do it this way? This is cool, but like it could be better. And threading that needle is definitely the daily challenge. And it's, there's heartburn and there's sleepless nights sometimes, but we make the best educated decisions that we can with the information that we have at the time.
Yeah, that's all you can do. I love that 80% rule, because I do think if you can achieve that, that's a pretty good goal in the contractors world, because let me tell you, these people are pretty picky over here.
Well, I can tell you from the beginning, we had this vision. Kevin and I sat down, before we went to our seat at the table group. We were like, okay, we're going to build this very prescriptive system. Like, there's only one way this state's going to work. People are going to love it. They're going to embrace it, and it's just going to work for them. And we rolled it out to our seat at the table group. It said, different areas of the system. We're just going to do it like this. And they would say, well, what about X, Y, or Z? I'm like, no, you can't do that anymore. You just have to do it like this. And they were like, that's never going to work. Like, it's not going to work for me. It's not going to work for anybody. And so one of the things that we've definitely taken a step back on is we still try to be prescriptive, very much so, because we feel like there are best practices and we implement those at Aspire, but we need that flexibility too, because businesses operate different. As Whitney just mentioned, even projects are different, and you have to be able to bend and flex to your client's needs. But we also need to know where we draw those lines too, and say, hey, we can't break certain rules, right? There's sound financial principles behind how Aspire runs, and there's some things that we can't just say, well, you can just do whatever you want at this point of the project. And it's like, no, the numbers need to add up at the end of the day. We need to draw some of those lines, but flexibility is a key piece that I've learned a few lessons on.
Yeah, that's definitely something that anyone who's heard me talk about Aspire and our journey over the last 4 years is you have to embrace the Aspire way. Because if you try to always create these workarounds, it may work for you when you're small and as an owner, you're involved with the entire day-to-day operation from start to finish. But as you scale and you add estimators and project managers and you add architects and you get this really big team going, you have to have an agreement around how things are done. And I have noticed every time we have sided with the Aspire way of doing things, long term, it's always worked out really, really well for us. The biggest example I can point to on this is labor variance. We would manage our progress and how we earned, quote unquote, earned revenue within our old system in a very different way. And Aspire's got this really unique, I would call it proprietary way of earning revenue and tracking labor hours. And that is really the core focus that we've honed in on when you're managing a construction project or any project-based revenue. It is all about estimated hours versus actual hours, even on heavily subcontracted projects. It's interesting. Even if I have 100 hours or 1,000 hours on a job, if you can estimate and manage those hours, your gross profit, your net profit, your materials, your client satisfaction, I mean, it just seems like everything comes into play. And if you're super low on hours, super high on hours, you're typically going to run into issues in those areas. And that was one thing that we leaned all in on in 2021. And it changed our business. It revolutionized how we manage, how we bonus our employees, how we do everything. So that's just like one little core pillar, I think, of what you guys do really well, because you've developed a system with the leading brands in the industry for over 10 years now. And I'm excited to see the next evolution of what Aspire is going to be going over the next 2 to 3 years. And anyone listening, I would encourage you guys to, like, whatever software you're on, hopefully it's Aspire, right? But if whatever you're on, just lean into that way of doing things, give it a try for at least a couple of years, and then see what those results will lead to.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Justin. Love hearing stories like that.
So let's talk about the next couple of years. And
Perfect.
you've been managing, you've seen success, you've been managing your labor on it, but an area for improvement is managing labor on one of those larger projects. And I think that, Whitney, can you speak a little bit about some of the actual, kind of getting the weeds here a little bit on some of the actual big changes we see on our roadmap coming in the next few years?
So, one of the big things that's coming, and this is actually the enhancement that one of our advisory boards said, hey, your roadmap looks cool, but we really would like this other thing, is estimate revisions. And it's the concept of multiple estimates under a single opportunity. And there's so many different use cases for this. One of the use cases we heard was in bid build construction. In any given market, there's only a handful of general contractors that are going to be large enough to bid certain size jobs. And likewise, there's only going to be a handful of landscape contractors who are equally poised to also bid the landscape scopes of work. And so many of our advisory board members in different markets all over the country said, yeah, I always bid the same job 5 times. And so sometimes they wanted to separate those into different opportunities, but sometimes they said, you know what, like I just want to have, kind of 5 different versions. I'm going to tweak things depending on different GCs because you have those relationships, who pays their bills on time and who doesn't. And I want to just be able to seamlessly send that out. And so we're working on that right now with our UX team. We're working through that with our architects, and we should be delivering that early next year, hopefully. Another one that just came out recently is equipment scheduling. We just delivered that functionality. I don't know, Justin, if you've ever played the phone game where you had to track down the skid steer because it wasn't where it was supposed to be and no one knew where it was. That was horrific
yeah.
for us. Yeah, right. And it's just, gosh, where is the skid steer? And so now in Aspire, you can schedule it. It can show up for your crews. If you don't know where it is, you can go look on the schedule and you can see where it is. If it comes back on Friday afternoon broken and no one seems to remember who might have used it last, you can go look and see where it was all week and see where the crews had it so you can figure out what went wrong.
Well, Whitney, both of those are awesome because we look at equipment as true assets in our company. And with the labor crisis we've experienced, and it's getting a little bit better, but like you alluded to at the beginning, design build blew up in 2021, but labor was unavailable. So you have this really difficult dichotomy in the industry where you have more work and less people. So we went really heavily investing into equipment. And so we look at adding a tractor or skid steer to a crew is like adding an additional employee or team member. But it's hard to know who has all the tractors. And some of our crew leaders would end up with 3 or 4 tractors on a job site and 2 employees. And you're like, what do you guys all get all the equipment for? But I think that's a really awesome add. And I could definitely speak to the revision side as well. We will bid into typically 3, 4, 5 generals in a competitive data market. And only one of them is going to get the job. So it's not really 5 opportunities in terms of a pipeline. It's really just one. But you have this challenge of how do you set it up. So, speaking directly from experience, these are 2 really exciting features that we're looking forward to. And I'm sure our team was part of the vocal crowd sending you guys ideas at some point through this process.
Absolutely. I have had some emails from K&D, always very helpful. Always also, I just can't tell you, the real life examples are so meaningful. They help us provide context, but also for our engineers, because I think it's easy sometimes, when you work outside in the sun and you have this amazing job where you get to literally make the earth more beautiful. It can seem like if you're a software developer, you just exist in this cave, bathed by this blue glow. Our engineers care so much and they ask so many questions about why would you do this? Is this helpful? And they come up with ideas. We have implemented many ideas that our engineers came up with because they were also thinking through in a process-minded way. Okay, well, if I'm a contractor and I'm out on this job and Whitney said this is what happens, then what? And it's really just kind of a really cool cohesive approach. I really can't wait to deliver these estimate revisions. It's going to be really cool.
That's exciting. I know our team's probably listening in to us excited on the launch of this.
Well, awesome. Anything else you guys want our listeners to know about like what the future holds, Mark?
One of the things I am excited about, and it is finally at the top of the priority list, are site audits. So this is a part of the system that does some really, really cool stuff, but there's so much more it can do. And again, a lot of our customers utilize it and utilize it well. And then there's others that they're buying like third-party products that they're using to manage the site audit function. And I think it's one that does a couple things. One is it drives the level up of customer service that you can deliver. Mm-hmm. So when you're trying to delight that a customer, being better able to manage and understand what's going on the property, what things look like, where the issues are, is an important thing. But it's also going to drive your revenue. So if you're especially a maintenance business, if you've got a maintenance business as part of your organization, there's a lot of opportunities to do upsell work, enhancement work that I don't believe is managed nearly as well as it should be. in most landscape organizations, especially when you look at it from the perspective of it typically is your most profitable work. It's work that the customer probably wants and values. It enhances their properties. And so having a tool that puts the contractor in a better position to serve the needs of their customers, I think a win-win in a huge way. So I'm really excited about site audits. It's a lot of other stuff going on too, but I've been waiting for that to get to the top of the list for a while.
Yeah.
For someone who was an account manager in her early days in the industry, I can tell you, I remember having to take my digital camera out to the property, take pictures, bring that back to the office, download the pictures off of the digital camera, try to remember why I took that picture of that specific place, and then put that into a Word document, which took me about, a couple hours to assemble and then send that out as, my way of getting enhancements on my maintenance contracts. And so for me, site audits is always a very exciting piece that I wish I had 15 years ago when I was beginning my career, and a very underutilized piece of the software. Excited to see it growing, not only for landscape, but for the commercial cleaning space. I'm really excited in general about construction coming out because I've seen what the impact we've been able to make in the landscape industry, what we're starting to make in the commercial cleaning industry, what Service Titan has made in plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and now Aspire gets to do in the construction side of things. It's just getting more ingrained with the trades and really helping these people who have some of the hardest jobs out there. Hands dirty, blue collar. My husband's one of them, and I see him, out there working hard on a daily basis. It's just really exciting to help another vertical of contractor. And so I think that is where I'm most excited.
Yeah, for sure. Site audits are really being dreaded in many ways by the cleaning customers that we're serving. That's very, very important for them, but everybody's going to benefit from it. So yeah, it's great to see it.
Exciting. Well, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening. Before we end up, I wanted to get your take, Mark, and Whitney as well, on the trends in our industry and speaking within the landscape industry, but just the greater, trades industry. We see everyone's focused and talking about commercial recurring revenue. And that's because there's so much private equity and consolidation happening. But I am realizing when I talk to people, their construction is really doing well. It's really strong. Backlogs are up. There are almost too much construction in some cases with people who are trying to have some type of exit. I see a really strong 2025 for construction. What are you guys seeing out there in the industry? Are there leading indicators and positive directions for 25? What are you guys hearing from some of the bigger names and the people you guys see and talk to on a regular basis? And Mark, maybe we'll start with you, and then Whitney, if you want to tune in, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think construction is really the barometer, right? That it's the thing that's going to change the most as the economy changes. As the economy's good, construction goes up. As the economy struggles, construction will go down. So I think you see people being a little bit more apprehensive of over-investing in construction, but at the same time, it's great revenue. It's profitable work. It's managed well. In many cases, more profitable than the maintenance work, even though the maintenance work tends to drive up enterprise value of these businesses. As you mentioned, there's a lot of private equity money, and that's flowing into the industry because it's a good industry. Lots of good, solid companies making good money. And so I think right now there is an optimism, but I think it's a little bit tempered with, but I don't want to look too far ahead because everybody's predicting, the economy is going to change, right? Next year, it's not going to be as good. We're due for a risk. I'm not an economist or anything like that, but I'm like, how about we just not do a recession? How about we just keep things going good? But there's people out there that are predicting that. Overall, optimistic. I think we did a survey this past week of our customers, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% of landscape contractors are very optimistic for the next year. They're looking at the next year going, there's great opportunity out there, and it's going to continue.
Well, it's great to hear. I'd echo those same comments. I know you guys talked in your team more about the product roadmap and everything, but any additional comments on what you're seeing from the people you talk with day in and day out?
Mark actually hit the nail on the head. I would have said cautiously optimistic as well. Being on the product side, definitely the tech industry has been hard hit this year. I think that can make some folks worry sometimes amongst the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis. I'm a landscaper. I self-identify as a landscaper. I can't be out in the sun anymore, but it's what I do. I am located in Central Texas, which is to say it's a really big state. It feels like there's always something massive under construction. So maybe that's the wrong litmus test, but there's a lot of work happening. And I think that folks are agreed, not wanting to over leverage, not wanting a repeat of, 2007, 2008. But a lot of folks expected at the end of 2020, maybe mid 2021, the bottom was going to fall out, and it didn't. And everything is still strong. And okay, 4 years post pandemic, at some point you have to say it's stuck. And I think that we're only going up. But yeah, I think that the word tempered that Mark used was probably pretty accurate. Cautiously optimistic.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for adding that. Maggie, what's your thoughts as we start to wrap this up? Anything else you want to add?
No, every single day, I just think I'm grateful to work with the people that I get to work with in the industry that I get to work with. It's to speak to kind of what Whitney was saying about the recession and all the times, regardless, the trades will still continue to be the trades. The people in the trades will still continue to be some of the most salt of the earth people. And I'm just grateful to work in this industry.
That's a great industry.
Well, thank you so much, Mark and Whitney, for joining us today. Our listeners are going to be very excited about what's coming out on the construction roadmap side of things, and I will be sharing that with them in the notes. But thank you guys for joining us, and we look forward to all the exciting things ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Whitney. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for having us. This is a blast.
Awesome. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day. Thanks. All right, guys, that's another episode of Trades Talk in the Book. Thanks so much for listening to the entire episode. Maggie and I do this as a passion project. So if you have a chance, please hit the subscribe button, share with one friend, and leave us a review. It goes a long way. And if you know any guests that you want to have on the Trades Talk podcast, make sure to reach out, send us a DM on socials, or get in touch with us. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day.